All right. Well, speaking of internet lurkers and people, we have had a bunch of lovely questions from the people that have been very patiently enjoying us waffling here. So I'm going to dive in with a nice one from Matt Monk, who said that you and your Nerdfighter audience, hi, have all grown up a bit. And with that, they feel like they may have moved on from the YA demographic. As readers, as you know, the people in it, where do you think the community will be in 10 years' time?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, if you told me in 2011 that I was still going to be making YouTube videos in 2021, I would have been very surprised, I think. And at the time, my intention was to write young adult books for the rest of my life, not because that was the age of Nerdfighteria or whatever, but because I was a YA writer before I had a YouTube channel, and I expected to be a YA writer for my entire career. And I have a lot of admiration for career YA writers like Jacqueline Woodson, who's been writing YA novels for 35 or 40 years and continues to find ways to speak to contemporary young people. And so I never thought of like, oh, I need my books to grow up because this internet community is growing up. There had been kind of already a divergence between like the internet community, the online community, and the audience of my books anyway. Like the vast majority of people who read The Fault in Our Stars were not Nerdfighters. And then I think by the time Turtles All the Way Down came out, like a lot of Nerdfighters were, and with good reason, like this seems like a good book, but I can tell it's not for me. And that's fine. That's also fine for the Anthropocene Reviewed, by the way. But I think what more than like seeing a change in the community, I saw a change in me, a change in what kind of story I was able to tell, what kind of story I felt comfortable telling, and a realization that I wanted to write as myself, which I do think probably resonates more with Nerdfighteria because that's what they're used to hearing. Like they're used to hearing me as myself. And so that's been, I guess, a bit of a happy accident. As for where the community will be in 10 years, my hope is that it will still be a force for good online, and especially a force for raising money and attention to highlight the challenges faced by the people who don't have access to the megaphones of the internet.
Well, I'm sure you can be very proud of the community because I mean, you've certainly done that. You've done it quite a lot, and I'm sure you'll continue to.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very little of what Nerdfighteria has accomplished has much to do with Hanker Me, to be honest with you. But I do feel really, really proud.
We have an anonymous attendee who, for someone anonymous, has said something very kind. I'm a creative writing student, and looking for Alaska made me want to write about my time at boarding school. And Bo once said that he attempts to give the audience what he cannot give himself. Do you have any advice for writing the sometimes more difficult parts and getting what you need from writing?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're writing about boarding school, the first thing I'd say is read some boarding school novels. Like, read just look up some good boarding school novels. There's this weird, I think, British boarding school novel that's from like 25 years ago that I'm the only person who's ever read that I really like, called The War for Jenkins' Ear.
Nope.
Read that.
Yep.
I don't think anybody else has read it, but it's good. And then, but more to the point, I think, especially with my first novel, I was trying to do that. Like I ended up trying to want to do other things with fiction, but with Alaska, I was writing back to my teenage self and trying to tell. I was really kind of shouting back to my teenage self and trying to shout back like, don't romanticize this person. Don't treat them like they're fundamentally different from being a human being, because if you do that, it's going to have catastrophic consequences. And I think that's a lot. Maybe that's why people have responded to that book so deeply, is because it was a really, it was personal, and it was, a pretty direct callback to my 17-year-old self. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that. Like there's a lot of beauty in that as a gift for readers, but I think you have to think of it as a gift for readers ultimately. For me, one of the challenges of writing and making videos and doing everything is like not making it unnecessarily about myself. Like I'm pretty interested in myself and like pretty curious about how I feel about things, and pretty tempted to put myself at the center, the epicenter of human history and everything.
Are you making fun of me right now, John?
No.
I'm sat right here. Jesus.
But I do, but I think for writing to work, it has to be a gift. It has to
Yeah.
be, it has to be something that you make for others.
You said it was quite difficult with the Turtles press tour because humans with their curiosity, and obviously they're going to go for those questions, and obviously they're going to say that. And there's a certain amount of, God, that's really shitty in a way that I can't explain to you, but also I understand how it's a completely natural question to ask. You know, kind of like, please let the sanctity of the fiction just be its own thing, which I understand. The Anthropocene Reviewed is completely actually you, and you are really going there. How has these last few weeks, and this right now, sorry, been just in that regard of saying, hey, John, I'm going to go straight to you now. Tell us about it.
It's kind of better, to be honest with you, because I know how to answer. I know how to deal with that. Like I know because I chose what I shared here. You know, like I made choices. There's a reason why like every scene with my kids is utterly generic, right? Like you don't know if my kids have brown hair or blonde hair. You don't know what their personalities are like. Like, you know, they're and that's because that's private for me, and that's not my choice. It's not. I feel like it's not my place to share, at least in book form. So I think because I was able to make the choices about what I shared, I felt a lot more comfortable going into the conversations. I also have done a lot of, not to, this is such a phrase, but I've done a lot of work around getting comfortable being like, no, I'm not gonna discuss
boundaries, please.
Yeah, just getting better boundaries and not feeling kind of obligated to answer a question that I'm uncomfortable with. And that's a lot of where I got into trouble, you know, between really the success of The Fault in Our Stars. I wasn't ready for that. I mean, I don't think anybody is, when it happens, is ready for it, but I wasn't ready for it at all. And I think, you know, there's this natural inclination to want to answer people's questions as a way of being polite. But sometimes, like, I don't know the answer, or other times I really don't want to share the answer. So,
well, I'm glad that you've learned that.
Yeah, so that's been good. And then the other thing is that, like, because I was writing about myself, like, I didn't feel the same kind of tension between like, well, I'm not a 17-year-old girl. Like, I'm trying to like write from a radically different perspective than my perspective. With this book, I can just be like, yeah, well, that's my perspective. And like, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
That seems right. We've got a lovely segue here, actually, from a seal. They said, if Henry asks, where do museums get their stuff from? What would your answer be? That's a good one.
A great question. I mean, I think I would say it depends on the museum.
The British Museum, let's not go there.
Yeah,
that's horrifying. Oof.
Yeah, so he's, you know, he's 11, and he's certainly very aware of and alive to, because his mom worked in museums, and because it's just something that we talk about. He's, you know, aware of some of the ethical issues around museum acquisitions. But the main thing that I would say to Henry actually is that in the case of like an art museum, almost all of the artwork comes from rich people who gave their artwork to a museum, partly so that we would think more highly of them as rich people, and partly so that they could pay less taxes. And so that these art museums are sort of a way for rich people to lower the amount of tax that they pay, while also like increasing their reputations. And then in the cases of museums that have artifacts that were not purchased through capitalism, but were instead plundered through colonialism, I think I could also explain that very straightforwardly to Henry, which is that in the name of keeping something safe, or in the name of you know, trying to protect the value of something, many artifacts and works of art were removed from the communities where they mattered, and were taken to communities where they were treated as sort of exotic objects of rapture. And we have to, all of us who work in or think about museums have to engage with that reality, and we have to figure out what we're going to do about it.
From explaining the truth behind museums to suddenly seeing that, you know, we're aware that we're turning the lights off because apparently the polar bears, does it give you a bit of hope that at least the next generation seems to be really, and let's say what it is, appreciating the truth of the universe that previous generations were not quite privy to?
Yes, yeah, and I think a lot of that is the good part of the internet, and I think a lot of it is that we've changed the way that we teach kids in some real, or at least some kids, in some really encouraging ways. And so I have hope. We don't, just to state the obvious, like we don't have time for Henry and Alice to like become 40 years old and start to deal with climate change. But also Henry and Alice know that, and so they know that that they don't have a choice except to be climate activists now, and millions of kids are taking up that banner, and I think we need them to, because I think look, it's really hard to change systems. It's really hard to change big resource intensive systems. We've built these systems over a very long period of time, and in a lot of ways they work really well for us, right? Like water treatment system in Indianapolis works amazingly. I haven't gotten cholera or giardia, and nobody in Indianapolis has in over 100 years. But if these big systems that we made that work pretty well are reliant upon a technology that is going to make our lives much, 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 much worse, we have to change them, and we have to change them really quickly. So I think that has to be the focus. But I strongly believe that nihilism or hopelessness is not the correct response to climate change, just because my own experience of despair is personal, and so I don't know if it holds up in data, but like my own experience of despair is that despair is not productive. I think I write in the book that like despair is like a replicating virus that just makes more of itself. It doesn't make me do the work or contribute to the work that needs to be done on these big issues.
Bug has completely flipped one of the last questions over to say, now that you've just exported this first nonfiction with all your reflections on the world, what have you missed about the fiction process? Because, you know, you said, oh, I didn't have to change my perspective to write. I enjoyed that. Yeah. What now do you go, actually, I wish, I really like that.
That is what I miss, actually, is losing myself. Or, I mean, one of the weird things about being a person, Bug, is that you're stuck for the whole time inside of one consciousness. It really is kind of like, if you pitch that to like an alien civilization, that would be like their worst horror movie. You know, it would be like their Saw, that like you've got to spend your whole time inside of one body.
Oh God, I'm chained to this.
Yeah.
What do I have to do?
Yeah. How do I get out of it? God, get me out of this body. And so I think I find that really weird. And one of the things I love about reading is that I feel like I'm closer than I can otherwise come to inhabiting someone else's consciousness, because books are so much a real collaboration of the reader and the writer. Like I feel like I'm actively participating in the life of this person who doesn't exist, which is a weird and for me really wonderful feeling. And it can make me feel like fiction books can make me feel less alone, I think, in a way that most nonfiction books just don't. And so those are all the things that I look for in stories, and that I love about both reading and writing stories. And like, I have been a little hard on the fiction writing process in this hour, I realize, but I actually love writing fiction. I hope I get to do it again.
I think that after I finish the typical John Green novel, I'm left with a mourning period where I'm grieving for these characters, which is obviously one of the blessings and the joys that you get to impart into people's lives. It is funny how the moment I finished reading the Anthropocene Reviewed, there wasn't a feeling of grief or a period of mourning afterwards where, you know, I finished this TV show, Where Are My Friends? It just made me go like, life, man. Like, oh my God, it's there. Cool.
Yeah,
which I enjoyed that. Hey,
that's a good feeling too. But I love that like post-book feeling of that you really only get from novels, I think, or from fiction, where you're just like, where you miss the characters, you know, like it was so wonderful to spend time with them, and now you have to say goodbye to them, and there's something like lovely and difficult about that. But that's also like when I write stories, I feel that times 100. Like I walk around, you know, thinking about Hazel and Gus for months and months after I finished The Fault in Our Stars, and it was really lovely. That was a lovely experience and a deeply personal one.
Well, I'm going to say it. I'm going to categorically declare that the Anthropocene Reviewed is my favorite John Green book.
Thanks,
and
man.
that is because John Green is my favorite John Green character. So
oh, Dan, that's the
thank
nicest
you.
thing you could have said. I really appreciate that. It's, we've talked about this a little bit before in public and also in private, but I think because I, was in the very fortunate position of getting to watch you kind of grow up on the internet, the public part of your life grow up. It's been such a great pleasure to root for you and to know you all these years and to see the adult you've become, the advocate you've become. It makes me feel, I hope you won't mind me saying this, but it makes me feel a sort of second level pride, where I'm so proud of the person you are that it makes me a little proud that I was also on the internet at the same time. And so those words mean a lot to me because I think very highly of you and your taste and the way that you write. And so that means a lot to me. Thank you.
I think that and what you said about growing up over the years on the internet, that's something that everyone in this chat relates to. All the people that have been there as YouTube viewers when they were teenagers, now they're young adults, who knows what age they are now. We've all been on this journey together. And I think that this book right here at a very timely time has given everybody a lot of perspective and hope that I'm sure that they're grateful for. Well, actually, you ruined teddy bears for me. I cannot look at a teddy bear anymore without thinking of Teddy Roosevelt ordering someone to slit a bear's throat. Awful, awful. I have my child. This is my childhood teddy bear right here.
So cute.
Harrods. Can't look at it anymore. And when I was a tiny child, this bear had a red ribbon around its neck in a perfect little bow. Just imagine it looks more complete if you imagine a red ribbon around the neck. And one day when I was about 9, I was playing karate with it, and I thought, I'm going to take it off and turn it into a headband.
Yes,
the problem was it was not tied on, it was stitched on, so it would forever look perfect. So I ripped it off, had great fun playing bear karate, and then when I went to go tie the bow back, I had this moment of realizing I will never be able to replicate the perfect bow. And I have now soiled this bear forever. And to this day, you can see the bit of red thread sticking out of its neck remaining from the stitching. And that taught me a profound lesson about learning to just accept certain inevitabilities and having to readjust and get a fresh perspective on things. So
I have to say, there's something really beautiful about like the single red string that survived, though. It's a reminder of how it's a reminder for you that like you can see both the bear that you loved after that moment, but you can have a little hint of the bear you loved before that moment.
Exactly.
And I hope that bear can maybe be one safe place through which you can go back to parts of your childhood and be like, well, that was a fun memory. I turned this bear into a karate kid.
Speaking in comet time, which I loved, by the time the meteor comes around again and we're all thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? What do you want the Anthropocene to have achieved? Just one thing.
Oh, that's a great last question. When the comet comes back around, I will be 83 years old if I am lucky. And the one thing that I would like I would love, that's a great question, Dan. The one thing that I would love for us to be able to say in that year, I would love for us to be able to look up at Halley's Comet and say, we are dealing with our changing climate in a way that we as a species can be proud of.
Here's hoping, or else.
Or else. Yes.
But hey, we all know about the polar bears now.
I think actually that's a great goal, like, because it's just far enough away, but we also know it is going to happen.
It's almost like the comet knows. It's like, you know what, guys, next time I see you, a couple degrees here or there, let's see how it's going.
Yeah, I gave you the computer last time I was here.
Yeah.
By next time I'm
here. What did you do with it, guys? Oh God, not that with the internet. Oh, the climate you did. Okay, fine. Yeah, poor comet. That comet is gonna see some shit, really. Woo! Well, thanks, John. Thanks for writing the book. Thanks for speaking to us here today. I'm sure that, I have so many questions just about the meaning of life, and I think that you lived up to the promise here at the How To Academy, so well done.
Dan, thank you so much for this conversation and for all of your work. over the last 15 years. I can't wait to see what you do over the next 15 years. Thanks to everybody for being here, and a huge thanks to How To Academy for making this all run so smoothly. It has been an absolute joy to be with all of you, and we really appreciate the time. And I hope you like the book. Thanks again.
Bye.